The other thing you realize is that writing a concept album, you're working within the confines of the story, and you're at some point you're not free to just express whatever you happen to be in the mood for expressing. You have to do something that helps move the story along and fits musically with the rest.
Hi, this is Rob Reed from Magenta, Cyan, Chimpanzee, Compendium, Kiyama, Sanctuary, and you're watching LiveProg.
First Nations people from earliest days tell tales of others, of mystical days.
Well, good afternoon for you.
And good evening. It's nice to
Thank
talk to you,
you.
Marcel.
It is. It is. Finally. I mean, it's yeah. We've been in touch for a while now
Yeah,
about this one. I'm holding it up.
yeah, thanks. Yeah. Yeah, I guess I want to say before we get started, thank you for taking the time to listen to my CD. Thank you for having me on to talk about it. And thanks for all you're doing for us prog rock fans. I was enjoying watching all your other interviews over the last week.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And it was my pleasure to listen. I'm always curious about new music and looking forward to discovering things. And yeah, I was really curious about this. From the name, I had no idea what to expect. So yeah, it was. But I gotta say, it was a absolute pleasure to listen to the album. And I gotta say, I was trying to prepare for this interview, and I was looking at your website and looking at your biography, and I figured there was not a lot of information. So I figured, you know what?
Okay,
We're just gonna wing it. We're just gonna see where it goes, and just have a nice conversation.
sure.
But yeah, like I said, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. The CD you sent had quite a journey to get to me.
I had no idea it would be so difficult to ship anything into the EU.
Me neither. But apparently, inside the EU, it can also be a hassle because I understood that there's a CD on the way to me, which was sent at the beginning of March from Italy, and it
Oh,
still hasn't arrived.
oh
So
my goodness.
I think all over the world, postal services are some kind of a nightmare. But yeah, I'm happy it did get to me, and I listened to it. I listened a lot to it. Yesterday, I decided to put it on with headphones to listen to more of the details. I mean, normally I just have it in my car or in my living room. But I gotta say, listening to the album on headphones was very nice. You hear a lot more detail in the music, so I can only
Well,
recommend that for anyone who wants to give it a try.
that might not be a coincidence because I used headphones a lot while I was recording. I don't have the greatest acoustic setup, so I relied on headphones while I was recording, and that's part of the reason I wanted to have somebody else master it as well because I didn't know if I could trust the sound I was getting in my own studio.
Okay, yeah, that's a very good decision then. Well, we'll get into that a little bit later. I'm very curious to well, a lot of things actually, but the name Matrix. Why would you went with that?
Well, because there really is no band. So Matrix is basically me operating in a virtual environment, kind of like the movie, the film
Okay,
Matrix, right? So it's a virtual world. I have a virtual band, and I just thought, well, that's kind of a fitting name.
okay. In that respect, yeah, it's quite fitting. I mean, I figured, why not, just release it under your own name? But yeah, with this explanation, it actually makes a lot of sense. So. Yeah, and it does tie in that way with the movie being a virtual world. So, all right, okay, and then of course, yeah, the topic. I mean, when I saw the title, I had an idea already, but then when you look at the back and then you see that shape, it's kind
Yes.
of obvious what it's about, and on the inside, you can even see it a little bit better. I gotta say, I enjoyed reading the story as well. I was kind of curious to it and reading along with it and seeing what it was. What inspired you to well, to go write a story about this topic?
Well, when I started recording just a few years ago, actually, I did a couple of tunes to kind of get some experience and learn how to use a DAW. I started this whole thing 5 years ago, not even knowing how to use a DAW. And after I got a couple of tunes under my belt, being a prog rock fan, I'm doing this for the same reason that you're doing these videos, just for the love of it and to share with other fans. And of course, what does a prog rock fan want to see in an album? I said, I need some kind of a great epic concept album, right? That's the mark of all
Yeah.
the great prog rock bands. So I was trying to think of a topic in the fantasy science fiction area that nobody has touched on yet, and I
Yeah.
was watching some YouTube videos about Bigfoot and things like that, and it was kind of a fascinating story, some fascinating historical accounts. I said, "Oh, that would make a great prog rock album." So I approached my brother with the idea to help me write some of the music because it was just too big a project to do entirely by myself. So he wrote about half of the music on the album. I wrote the story and the lyrics, and I did the recording and the arranging and all that stuff.
So it's a kind of a duo then, dual project.
Yeah, up to a point. Yeah,
Yeah. But you are right. I mean, I to my knowledge, I have never seen any prog rock about Bigfoot. So if anyone watching this interview says, I know one," let me know
right,
in the comments
right.
then of the video because I'm curious. But mostly it's well, it's a lot of Lord of the Rings and dragons and elves and wizards and stuff. So yeah, in that sense, you are bringing a kind of a unique story with that. How long have you been working on this album?
This album probably about 3 years from beginning to end. End being, I had the mixing and mastering done by John Mitchell about a year ago. Now we were engaging in that whole process. So started about 3 years before that.
Okay, yeah, and you mentioned you had a virtual band. Um, so I'm going to take it out. I have a cheat and look at the well the kind of a lineup. You do have a few guest musicians on guitar, but it says here that all instruments are done by you. So what exactly what kind of instruments do you play on the album?
Well, I play all of the guitars, bass, and keyboard parts. Um, all of I have a relatively inexpensive keyboard setup, and all of the sounds came right out of the software. Again, that's the virtual part of it. The drummer is virtual. So I did, you could say, the guitars, the vocals, and I programmed the keyboard parts. And I'm not much of a lead guitarist, so I did some of the leads myself. But when I had the opportunity, I know a few acquaintances who are, great guitarists. So I invited them to contribute on certain levels. And one of them in particular, somebody I've worked with locally, he was really enjoying it, and he asked to be involved more. That was
Okay.
Tommy Atkins. So he appears on about 4 or 5 tracks, I think.
Okay, yeah. So well, it's nice that someone has an interest in your music and wants to be a part of it. So that's a good thing. And the yeah the leads definitely were interesting. But at the same time, musically, I found it yeah an interesting mixture of styles that I listened to. It yeah it wasn't kind of predictable like this is prog rock and you have long epics or anything. It was different kind of styles, but at the same time, I didn't find it like incoherent or something. It felt like everything was in its place. So in that respect, yeah, I would say you did a very good job writing. Well, and your brother wrote the music, right?
Yeah, I drafted my brother to help write the music. He ended up writing probably just a bit more than half of the music
Okay.
that appears on the CD. I ended up writing the other half because I got to a point in the recording where I was getting ahead of him a bit. and he got tied up with some things. So he actually had more experience writing coming in. When we used to work together in our youth, I would typically be the lyricist and he would write a lot of the music. So I
Yeah,
didn't have as much confidence in my own writing, but by the end of the album, I was uh, enjoying the process.
yeah,
Actually,
yeah.
uh,
When you were writing with your brother, did you write separate from each other, or I mean, how did you
yes,
divide
he
the tasks?
well he lives in another state, so we can't work together too closely. But nowadays I figure we can do long distance collaboration. So I would write some lyrics. I'd discuss the concept with him, and I'd write some lyrics, and I'd send him something, and he would put a melody to it and some chords. And a lot of times he would just send it back to me in a relatively raw form to let me do the arrangement on my own. Other times he had a specific arrangement in mind. He would tell me what he was picturing for the song. Um, so again, because we had some experience going back many years, it was a somewhat comfortable process, but we have found that artistically we've gone a little bit in different directions.
Okay.
So sometimes he would present something to me that wasn't what I had in mind when I sent him the lyric. And likewise, when I did the arrangement, he would say, well, that wasn't what he had in mind in the arrangement. But it is what it is. I feel like at a certain point, the song takes on a life of its own, and you have to
Yeah.
just go with it and let it be.
Yeah, yeah, I understand. Okay, interesting, but it's still, a real nice collaboration, and with a very nice end result. So in the end, that is good. But I'm kind of curious. I mean, you said that you started like 5 years ago making music. Before that, did you have anything in music like playing or?
Yeah. So I've been a musician my entire life. My father is a classical musician and a music educator.
Hmm.
And when we were still kids, my brother and I got a formal music education from my father. And we were involved in school, and then we were involved in bands as teenagers, and in up through our college years. Um, and then I became an engineering major in college. So at that point, um, I got busy with my career, family, and the music really went on the back burner. And then where I had started dabbling with recording in the '80s, I hadn't touched it in 30 years.
Okay, yeah.
So the tools are obviously very different now, and there was some learning curve, but they're so much more powerful than what I had learned with back in the day. I felt like you can kind of do anything with this stuff. Um, so as I was approaching retirement in my career, I taught myself using YouTube videos how to do the recording process, how to become an expert. I'm using Logic Pro that I had access to, and the music part was the least difficult to learn. Although my musical skills had kind of gone to heck over the years, but so I had to kind of relearn guitar. I was playing bass more in recent years, um, but that's just the way it went.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, well, it's still a nice process and nice to see that, despite the fact that you had a different kind of career, you still moved back towards music and recording and everything and got a lot of enjoyment out of that.
Anxious undetermined, feelings that are lost in nature. No right words to that side, no
You mentioned John Mitchell from Arena, who
Right.
mixed and mastered your album. How did you get him involved in this?
Well, there's the long version of that story and the short version. So the short version is during COVID, John does generally does a lot of gigging, a lot of playing on other people's albums, making appearances, doing different things. As you probably know, he's involved in 4 or 5 different
Yeah,
projects.
yeah,
And I guess during COVID, he couldn't do a lot of the stuff that he normally does. So I was following him on social media, and he was actively soliciting for studio work.
Oh, okay.
So I was in the middle of doing the album at the time, and I said to myself, "Gee, wouldn't it be fun when I get through this to maybe get in touch with him and see if he can work on helping me finish it." So what happened after that was when things started opening up again, and I retired in 2022. I went to see Arena at a show in Scotland, and I figured if I get a chance, I'll try to see if I can talk to John and approach him about doing this project. And after the show, they had a bit of a reception, and I got to meet pretty much everybody in the band. But the busiest one, the guy who seemed to be most in demand, was actually John.
Yeah.
He ended up being the one I think I spoke to the least.
Mm, okay.
But the person I was able to speak to for most of the evening was Clive Nolan. So I bought him a couple of drinks and we had a conversation. And I wasn't expecting to have the opportunity to talk to him, so I didn't have a lot of things to talk about. Like I hadn't prepared for, to interview him or anything like that. But we chatted off the cuff, and my wife kind of blurted out to Clive, "Oh, Tom's working on an album. He's recording an album." And Clive Nolan says, "Well, oh, really? What kind of music are you doing?" I said, "Well, actually, it's prog." I said, "It's somewhat like Arena. In fact, his stuff inspired me." And I said, in fact, I was hoping to catch up with John to see if he could possibly master the album for me. And Clive says at that point, "Well, why don't you do it at Thin Ice Studios, which is a
Okay.
studio that he apparently manages with Carl Groom."
Yeah.
Which I didn't know at the time. I had seen Thin Ice referenced on the Arena albums, but I didn't
Hmm.
know what the story was. So he made that offer. I thought, well, that's fine. This is just as
Yeah.
good. Uh, so we agreed I would contact him, when I was getting near the end of the album. So a year goes by, and I'm finishing up, and I emailed Clive and I said, "I don't know if you remember, we met in Scotland and I, talked about having this work done with you guys." And he said, "Oh, yes, I remember the conversation. In fact, the way I remember it was like this," which was a little bit different than I remembered, but no big deal. And then he said, "But the person you really want to speak with is Carl Groom. He's the one who can do the I guess the
Yeah.
math." So I'm like, "That's fine. I know who Carl Groom is. I'd be delighted to work with him. Please send me the contact information." Well, a month goes by. I hear nothing.
Ah.
Another month goes by and I hear nothing. And I fully take responsibility for any misunderstanding that went on at this point.
Hmm.
But I'm starting to think, well, you know what? I'm just a fan. They're probably not that interested in working with me. And realistically, it was probably just that Clive was too busy to get back to me. But after not hearing from him for 2 months, I decided, you know what? I'll go back to plan A. Let me email John and see if he's interested.
Yeah.
And John, I get the impression that John never says no to a gig. Yeah. So he said, "Sure, send me, a sample of what you have to work with, and we'll get you going and all that." So I started working with John, and of course, 3 weeks later, I get an email from Clive saying, "Where did we leave off on this?" And I'm like, "Whoops." I said, "Well, we left off kind of just where you see. I never heard anything back from you guys, and I thought maybe you weren't interested. So I made other arrangements. So he apologized for dropping the ball. I don't know. Maybe it was my fault or just a misunderstanding. But part of me was wondering whether he had run into John in the meantime. And John mentioned, "I'm working with this guy from Pennsylvania, and that might have struck a chord with Clive and said, "Oh, yeah, I think I remember something like that. What happened to that guy?"
You never know how this goes, but at least you ended up working with John. So that's a good thing.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
You have a lot of confidence when you work with a professional. You know you're going to get some kind of a credible result.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I gather you kind of learned also some things from him.
Well, I was hoping to. I But John is he's very busy. I really got the feeling that it was a bit of a struggle for him to find the time to
Mm,
get this work in, but he did ultimately. He's very busy and he's very professional, and he doesn't comment at all. I was
mm,
really hoping I would get some constructive criticism.
yeah,
Ooh, man, those guitars, the next time you record them, do it like this instead, but I did not get any kind of feedback. And
mm,
that was part of the reason I was hoping to work with somebody with that kind of experience. I really thought
yeah,
that was part of it. So a little bit of disillusionment on my part.
yeah. I can imagine. And I guess you guys were working long distance, so that
Yeah,
doesn't make it easier.
yeah, it did not make it easier. I
No.
for one would much have preferred if we could have set aside a block of time and I could have been sitting next to him while we're
Yeah,
going through the tunes. Instead, he's taking a first pass, which artistic differences. He's hearing things one way, and I'm hearing the way I think it should be. So I'd have to
yeah,
send a laundry list of things, could you bring this up a little, bring that a little down, and, change the sound of this a little. And
yeah.
he was excellent he read and addressed every single comment I gave him, but I did feel like, what's he going to think of this guy sending him all these critiques on his professional level work?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I can understand that. I mean, yeah, you're kind of hoping something, and then it doesn't entirely live up to what you expect of it. Altogether, I mean, how do you look back on the whole experience of making this album?
Well, you get a real appreciation for what people do in the studio, especially when you hear stories of bands going into a studio with no material and coming out 4 weeks later, 6 weeks later with a completed album. I don't know how they do that. As I said, it took me 3 years. The other thing you realize is that writing a concept album, you're working within the confines of the story, and you're at some point you're not free to just express whatever you happen to be in the mood for expressing. You have to do something that helps move the story along and fits musically with the rest, which we did make an effort to do, by the way. That
Hmm.
the tracks, there are a lot of little themes and motifs that appear in one track and then appear later in another track, or you get some reference to previous tracks. So we tried to connect the whole thing musically, and that was actually quite a lot of effort to be able to do that.
That is something I can understand. I mean, it's different kind of stories, different emotions in the story. So, yeah, it's kind of a puzzle to get everything working. Um, uh, as I mentioned, I hear a lot of different influences, different things that like it reminds me of this, it reminds me of that. What is your musical inspiration yourself?
Well, going back to my youth, of course, a lot of the great classic prog bands like Genesis, Yes, Rush, a little bit of Jethro Tull. More recently, you have bands like Arena. When I discovered Arena 20 years ago, I said to myself, "Gee, I didn't know anybody was still making music like this. You
Okay,
didn't hear this stuff anymore."
yeah.
Um, Arena. Some other modern bands like Haken, Symphony X. So I was partial to the classic melodic style of prog, more like what Arena does. But I also recognize that the modern prog rock fan, a lot of them are coming from the metal direction. So I
Mhm.
tried to throw in a few nods to the metal fans.
Yeah.
And sort of mixed all those things together. And then the rest was kind of dictated by the story. My brother actually wrote the couple of acoustic pieces that are on the album with those really, beautiful acoustic guitar
Hmm.
arrangements. Um, and I thought that was a nice break, from the other stuff that we're doing.
Yeah, yeah. Is your brother also into progressive rock, or does he have a
Oh,
different
absolutely,
kind of
absolutely. Yeah,
background?
he's the one who introduced me to progressive
Ah,
rock.
okay.
So as I said, we got a music education from my father, and then when we were teenagers, he started listening to Rush, and he took up the bass, and he comes home with a guitar one day, and he hands it to me, and he says, "Learn this so we can jam together." So he's the one that introduced me to this style. And we're both progressive rock fans, although the bands he listens more to the Haken kind of stuff, and I'm more the arena kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But we understand where we're all coming from.
Hmm. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so it's nice that you have at least that similar background. I mean, if he would listen to something else, would have made it maybe a little more challenging to do a prog rock album together. But as I said, the end result is really great. I absolutely enjoy listening to it. Um, this is your first time, writing and playing and recording an album. And that's why I was curious, like, how do you look back on it? Because I'm curious, like, what you've learned in these 3 years making this album. Is that kind of maybe a motivation to do another one?
Yeah, absolutely. Although I think in the immediate future, I might focus a little bit more on releasing singles because that seems to be the way music is done nowadays. It's more the way that you accumulate fans. It's
Hmm.
not many people waiting for the next concept album to come out, especially over here in the US. There's not the style is
Okay.
kind of fallen asleep. And we live in a time where people download singles and make their own playlists and things like that. So I
Yeah.
think until I build up some following, I'm probably gonna maybe focus a little bit more on singles, but I would like to do the same kind of thing again someday.
Yeah.
Especially if there's any demand for it. It'd be great if we get to share this with a few people and
Yeah,
have
definitely.
people actually waiting for something like that.
Yeah, well, I know that especially here in Europe, the prog rock scene is quite alive. There's a lot of new bands over the past few years coming up, making interesting music. So yeah, I definitely
I've
see.
learned that from your channel.
All
I have
right.
seen so many great musicians, that I've never heard of over here,
Yeah. Well,
that seem to have some following.
yeah, I'm discovering a lot myself as well. I mean, I've been away for a while, so I missed a lot. And then when I came back and I saw how many new bands there were that weren't like there 5 years ago or 10 years ago, it's like, wow, there's still a lot of new bands coming up. So apparently, I see that there is a demand for it. There are people interested in that music and like to see it. So yeah, I really hope that here in Europe also people will get notice of this album and pick it up and listen to it and enjoy it and well follow you of course and get that following. But at the same time, I understand doing singles might be a good way to yeah get some more attention, get some more people to notice it, and then hopefully that could lead to a follow-up album that will be very nice. So I would hope so. I would definitely like to see more music of you because I enjoyed Mountain Legend very much.
I guess I'd have to say for the folks in the EU, if they want the album, it's probably better for the time being if they do the download because I don't know how to get them the CD. Uh,
Yeah,
if I get enough demand, I'll open a store on Amazon or something, and they can handle the distribution, the shipping. But right now, it seems to be cost prohibitive to send a single CD to somebody, as you and I found out. We had to pay on
we
both
did.
ends.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a real shame, and that's kind of a hindrance for American musicians to kind of get some some more following and how you say that attention here in the EU. So I definitely hope that at least people will go for the download then, so that at least they can listen to the music and support you in that way. And like I said, hopefully grow enough fan base for you to come up
Right.
with another album.
And we've made the booklet. The lyric book is available as a PDF download when you download the album. So you'll be getting almost the whole experience, just not the physical package.
Okay, well that's a nice thing. I mean, I notice sometimes I get a digital promo from a band and I don't have any lyrics with it, and it kind of I still enjoy it, but it's nice to have the lyrics with it, to have in your case also the story, the accompanying story with it, that you get a better understanding of how what it all entails, and it's not just music, it's a real story, and I find it a very interesting story. So that's definitely a good thing.
For the people listening, I guess the story is from the perspective of somebody who ends up doing some field research looking for this animal, and the lyric book is compiled in the form of a field notebook. So that's what we were going for. I don't know if you had a look at that, but it's
I had a look at that.
yeah.
I'll bring it a little up close to the camera.
So right, you got
People,
all his sketches and notes as well as the
yeah,
lyrics and his journal entries.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, the artwork. This way. There we go. So
Thank you
people
for showing them.
can get an idea of what it all is, and well, if they want to listen, well, they can go to your website. They can go to your YouTube channel. I'll put links in the description of the interview video, and then people can check it out themselves. And I really hope they do. I definitely encourage you, check this music out. It's really good.
So the website is matrixprogrock.com. I do have a disclaimer. If you go to my YouTube channel with my distributor, unfortunately, there is some ambiguation between myself and another Matrix.
Ah,
So you will find on my YouTube channel not only my prog rock videos, but you will find some R&B stuff,
oh,
which isn't me. So there's another little story there. When I first started making my own videos and my distributor was posting my tracks to YouTube, I was getting a copyright strike on my own music.
okay.
So I had to communicate with them and explain to them that I am the author and the copyright holder. So they made my YouTube channel the official channel, which was great. And then they put
Okay.
all their things on my channel. But then they also added somebody else's music. And I don't want to take it down because it's somebody else's music, but nor do I want to take credit for it.
Yeah, yeah, I understand that. I mean,
So
it's
I'm not sure.
completely
I was
different.
kind of hoping that this other artist would contact them and say, hey, those particular videos belong on my channel.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, let's hope he'll do. All right, Tom, I want to thank you very much for taking the time and having a chat and telling a little bit more about the backgrounds of your album.
I appreciate you listening, Marcel. Appreciate you talking about it. And if you want to use any of the music clips or anything in this video or others, please feel free. I'll make sure that there are no copyright issues.
I appreciate that. I will definitely edit in some music. By the time this airs, people have already seen it and know it, so.
And if you
All
ever get a
right.
chance to talk to John Mitchell, please ask him what his impressions are because he never really told me.
I hope to see John at the end of May when Arena comes to the Netherlands. So I'll try to remember it and I'll try to let him know. Maybe I'll bring the CD and show it to him and then
Yeah,
remember this one.
yes, I handed it to him at what he came 15, 20 minutes from where I live with the David Cross band.
Okay.
And I ran into him there. I made a point of going to that show and I presented him to the album. And I said, I think you know the engineer. And he said, that's me. He said, that was you? And I said, yes, that was me. So,
All right.
we did finally get to meet. So he put a face with the music, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
hopefully he remembered.